The Habsburg Empire ruled over vast territories, for centuries accumulating staggering wealth, priceless art, and glittering jewels. Their palaces overflowed with masterpieces. Their vaults brimmed with gold, and their private collections held items of unimaginable beauty and historical significance. But as empires rise and fall, so too do their treasures. Wars, revolutions, and the simple passage of time have swallowed countless pieces of this magnificent legacy. Some were plundered, some were hidden, and some simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind only whispers and legends. What became of these lost wonders? Where did they go? The answers remain buried, perhaps forever, beneath layers of history and mystery. Prepare to journey into the shadowy corners of the Habsburg past and discover 7 of their most enigmatic disappearing acts. Number 7. The Royal Refuge Train of Archduke Otto. The Habsburg dynasty, though its empire dissolved after the First World War, continued to exist as a family holding significant personal assets and historical objects. Archduke Otto von Habsburg, son of the last Emperor Karl I, found himself navigating a tumultuous 20th century. Born in 1912, he witnessed the collapse of his family's ancient rule, the rise of Nazism, and the Cold War's Iron Curtain descending across Europe. In the chaos of the Second World War, as Nazi Germany aggressively expanded its reach and then began to crumble under Allied pressure, many wealthy families, including former royal houses, scrambled to secure their remaining valuables. Gold, jewels, art, and important documents were often packed into trains, lorries, or even personal cars spirited away from advancing armies or bombing raids. Archduke Otto, a staunch opponent of Nazism, spent much of the war in exile, first in France, then in the United States. Yet even from afar, the fate of the remaining Habsburg family possessions in Central Europe was a constant concern. Many valuable items, particularly those held in private residences or less secure storages, were at immense risk. The family understood the importance of preserving their cultural heritage, not just for personal wealth, but as a connection to 1,000 years of European history. There was a desperate effort in the final years of the war, as the Eastern Front collapsed and Soviet forces pushed westward to move as much as possible out of harm's way. This was not a single unified imperial treasury, but rather a collection of private family assets, heirlooms, and historical artifacts that had been scattered across various properties in Austria-Hungary and Czechoslovakia after the empire's dissolution. One particularly persistent rumor centers on a specific refugee train, purportedly loaded with Habsburg valuables, attempting to make its way west from Hungary or Austria. In the spring of 1945, the end of the war was marked by absolute pandemonium. Roads were choked with refugees, military convoys, and retreating armies. Rail lines, critical for transport, were constantly bombed, sabotaged, or simply overwhelmed. In this environment, a train carrying something as precious as historical gold or art would have been a prime target for looters, desperate soldiers, or even opportunistic local officials. Witnesses reported seeing trains packed not just with people but with crates and boxes, sometimes covered with tarpaulins, moving slowly through the countryside. These accounts often blurred the line between official military transports, civilian evacuation efforts, and attempts to move private wealth. The idea of a specific Habsburg treasure train is not as concrete as, say, the Allied efforts to recover Nazi-looted art, but it stems from multiple fragmented stories. Some accounts from the period describe German military units or Hungarian collaborators attempting to move valuable assets, including some from former Habsburg properties, ahead of the Soviet advance. These trains, often called gold trains or treasure trains by those who saw them, were rarely official, well-documented operations. They were desperate, clandestine efforts. For instance, there were documented cases of Hungarian national gold reserves being moved by rail, which sometimes gets conflated with private family fortunes. The Arrow Cross regime in Hungary, aligned with the Nazis, was known to have seized and transported Jewish and other confiscated valuables by rail. It is plausible that some former Habsburg properties, particularly those in Hungary, might have had their contents targeted. One theory suggests that a train, or a series of railway cars, left a remote estate in western Hungary, possibly near the Austrian border, in late March or early April 1945. This train, it is believed, carried items that had been consolidated from several family residences as the Soviet Red Army closed in. Among the supposed contents were not only personal jewels and gold, but also historical documents, rare books from private libraries, and perhaps even smaller pieces. The train was reportedly trying to reach the relative safety of the American or British occupation zones in Austria or Germany. However, the exact route it took remains unclear. The railway infrastructure was severely damaged. Communications were non-existent, and the lines were often contested battlegrounds. Another narrative places the disappearance in the chaotic days immediately following Germany's surrender. In May 1945, as various Allied forces moved in to occupy different zones, there was a brief period of intense lawlessness and confusion. Supplies were scarce and opportunistic looting was rampant. A train that managed to survive the active fighting might have been plundered at its sidings, its contents dispersed among soldiers or civilians. The lack of a clear manifest, combined with the fragmented nature of the Habsburg family's assets at that point, made tracing specific items incredibly difficult. Many family members were themselves displaced, trying to reunite or simply survive. The story of the Royal Refuge train thus becomes a composite of these wartime realities. It represents not a single grand imperial movement, but the desperate individual efforts of a once powerful dynasty to preserve what it could of its heritage in the face of total collapse. There are no definitive records of a specific train designated Habsburg assets that vanished, but the general phenomenon of valuable trains disappearing in 1945 is well documented. Many such trains were seized by Allied forces, particularly the Soviets, who viewed them as war reparations. Other trains simply vanished, their contents pillaged or hidden. The fate of any specific Habsburg private collection moved by rail during those final frantic weeks remains shrouded in this wider historical chaos. The Archduke Otto himself became a prominent figure in post-war European politics, advocating for a united Europe and maintaining a connection to his families. Historical legacy. He never publicly confirmed the existence of a specific treasure train in the way some legends suggest, but he often spoke of the immense losses the family incurred during the wars. The idea of the Royal Refuge train serves as a powerful symbol of the ending of an era, a final, desperate attempt to preserve a past that was rapidly slipping away. The valuables that may have been on such a train, if it ever existed, as a coherent entity, are now likely dispersed, either in private hands, lost forever to time and decay, or perhaps even unknowingly housed in museums or collections where their true turmoil of the war's end. The mystery of the Royal Refuge train remains a captivating echo of a world turned upside down. Number 6. The Golden Casket of Emperor Francis II. Emperor Francis II, who later became Francis I of Austria after the Holy Roman Empire was dissolved, ruled during one of Europe's most tumultuous periods. His reign spanned the French Revolution, the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte, and the devastating Napoleonic Wars. These were not just wars of armies, but also wars of ideology, collapsing old orders and forging new nations. The Habsburgs, as the head of the ancient Holy Roman Empire, were at the very center of the storm, often battling against Napoleon's formidable forces. Vienna, the imperial capital, found itself repeatedly threatened and even occupied by French troops. In times of great uncertainty and impending invasion, rulers and wealthy families often made desperate efforts to secure their most precious possessions. Gold, jewels, and invaluable documents could not be left to the whims of invading armies or the chaos of occupation. They were often packed into sturdy containers, sometimes reinforced with iron bands, or hidden in specially constructed compartments, and then secretly moved to safer locations. The stories of these hidden treasures are numerous across Europe, often becoming local legends of buried gold or lost artifacts. For Emperor Francis II, the security of his personal and dynastic treasures was paramount. These were not just items of monetary value, but tangible links to his family's long history and the very legitimacy of his rule. One of the most persistent tales involves a specific golden casket belonging to Emperor Francis. This was not a large, ornate chest, but rather a smaller, more intimate container, perhaps crafted from precious woods and then richly overlaid with gold filigree and delicate enamel work. Such items were typical of imperial craftsmanship, designed to be both beautiful and highly functional. What this golden casket was rumored to contain made it particularly significant. It was believed to hold not just a few personal jewels or coins, but a collection of deeply personal and politically sensitive items. These could have included a selection of the emperor's most treasured personal letters, perhaps correspondence with other European monarchs, or even secret diplomatic papers that outlined alliances. It might have also contained small but incredibly rare historical relics or highly symbolic pieces of jewelry passed down through generations of Habsburg rulers. The exact nature of its contents varied in the telling, adding to its mystique. The disappearance of this golden casket is primarily linked to the period of Napoleon's occupation of Vienna. In 1805 and again in 1809, French forces occupied the Habsburg capital. These occupations were humiliating for the imperial family, who were forced to flee their beloved Schönbrunn Palace and Hofburg residence. Before the French entered the city, there would have been frantic efforts to evacuate the most vital state treasures and personal valuables. Large, well-known pieces of the imperial regalia and major artworks were often carefully packed and sent to more secure locations, sometimes in Hungary or Bohemia, under heavy guard. However, smaller, more personal items, particularly those held within the emperor's private apartments, might have been moved with less fanfare, perhaps by a trusted personal staff member. The story goes that during the 1809 occupation, as Napoleon's Grande Armée approached Vienna, the golden casket was entrusted to a loyal aide or a specific court official. The goal was to transport it safely out of the city and away from the grasp of the French. Historical accounts from the time describe the chaos of the evacuation. Carriages filled with panicked nobility and their possessions streamed out of the city gates. Roads were congested, and the journey itself was fraught with danger from marauding soldiers, bandits, or simply accidental loss in the confusion. It is during this desperate flight that the golden casket is said to have vanished. There are several theories about what happened. One theory suggests that the aide responsible for the casket was either captured by French skirmishers or perhaps even fell ill or died during the journey, leaving the casket abandoned or unknowingly taken by someone else. Another theory posits that the casket, being relatively small, was simply misplaced or stolen during a transfer between carriages or a temporary stop. In the fog of war, tracking every item, no matter how valuable, was an impossible task. A small ornate object could easily be mistaken for something less significant or simply overlooked in the rush. There are also darker whispers that suggest the casket was deliberately hidden by the person entrusted with it, perhaps out of a desire to protect it from all sides or even for personal gain. However, no definitive proof of such an act has ever surfaced. The impact of the casket's loss would have been primarily personal and symbolic for Emperor Francis. While the larger state treasures were generally secured, the loss of this specific item, with its intimate and historical contents, would have been a painful reminder of the disruption and humiliation. The period of the Napoleonic Wars was characterized by an unprecedented movement and loss of artworks and historical objects across Europe, as victorious armies plundered defeated nations. While many pieces were later recovered or returned, others simply disappeared into private collections or were broken up for their materials. The mystery of the golden casket persists because there are no clear records of its recovery or its eventual fate. Unlike large, unique artworks that can be identified through provenance, a smaller, though valuable casket with personal contents could have easily been disassembled, its gold melted down or its contents dispersed, and then lost to history. The absence of documentation, combined with the extreme upheaval of the period, means that the golden casket remains a phantom treasure, a whisper of untold secrets from the heart of a collapsing empire. Its story is a poignant reminder of the personal cost of empire-shaking wars and the elusive nature of history's many secrets. Number 5. Maria Theresa's Diamond Brooch of the Four Seasons. Empress Maria Theresa was a formidable ruler, a woman who defied expectations and shaped the destiny of the Habsburg monarchy in the 18th century. Her reign was marked by intense political maneuvering, military conflicts like the War of the Austrian Succession and the 7 Years' War, and significant domestic reforms. Despite the constant pressures of governing, Maria Theresa also had a profound appreciation for beauty and the arts. Like many European monarchs of her era, she possessed an astonishing collection of jewels, worn not just as personal adornment, but as powerful symbols of her authority, wealth, and the grandeur of the Habsburg court. Among her vast array of diamond necklaces, pearl earrings, and intricate tiaras, there is a particular piece that captured the imagination of contemporary observers. The Four Seasons diamond brooch, it was described as a miniature work of art, a dazzling display of craftsmanship and gem-setting skill. The brooch was reportedly designed with 4 distinct sections, each representing a season of the year. Spring might have been depicted with delicate green diamonds or emeralds, forming foliage, perhaps accented by smaller white diamonds symbolizing blossoms. Summer could have featured larger, brilliant cut diamonds representing the sun's intensity. Autumn might have used yellow or brown diamonds, or perhaps topaz, to evoke falling leaves and rich harvests. Winter would likely have been composed of icy white diamonds, perhaps in snowflake patterns, conveying the chill and sparkle of snow. The diamonds themselves would have been of exceptional quality, likely sourced from the legendary mines of Golconda in India, or later, from Brazil, which had become a significant diamond producer by the 18th century. The sheer number of stones and the intricate design would have made this brooch incredibly valuable, not just for its materials, but for its artistic merit and the prestige it derived from being part of the Empress's personal collection. Maria Theresa was known to wear her jewels frequently at state functions, court balls, and diplomatic receptions, where they would have served as powerful visual statements of her power and the enduring legacy of her house. The disappearance of the Four Seasons. Diamond brooch is shrouded in a certain degree of mystery, primarily linked to the tumultuous period following Maria Theresa's reign and the subsequent upheavals of the late 18th and early 19th centuries. While many of the Habsburg crown jewels and the most significant pieces of the imperial treasury were meticulously documented and passed down personal items, even those of immense value sometimes had less formal record. After Maria Theresa's death in 1780, her extensive collection of jewelry would have been inherited by her children, particularly her son, Emperor Joseph II, and her daughter. The collection would have likely been dispersed among various family members, or some pieces may have been designated as part of the imperial household's permanent collection. One theory suggests that the brooch might have been one of the many items broken up for its individual stones. In the 18th and 19th centuries, it was not uncommon for grand pieces of jewelry to be disassembled and recut or reset into new designs, reflecting changing fashions or the specific preferences of new owners. A truly magnificent piece like the Four Seasons brooch would have contained many valuable diamonds. If the intricate design fell out of favor, or if a particular successor needed funds or wished to create new pieces for other family members, the brooch could have been sacrificed. Its unique design, while remarkable, might have made it less adaptable for future styles, leading to its dismantling. This would mean the diamonds still exist, but the brooch as a complete recognizable piece of art is gone. Another possibility ties its disappearance to the chaos of the Napoleonic Wars. As discussed with Emperor Francis II's golden casket, the Habsburg family experienced multiple invasions and forced evacuations of Vienna. While major state treasures were secured, many private valuables, particularly those of individual archdukes or duchesses, who had inherited portions of Maria Theresa's collection, might have been lost or stolen. During these periods of upheaval, a small though incredibly valuable item like a brooch could have easily been pilfered during a hurried evacuation or fall into the wrong hands during periods of general unrest and looting that often accompanied military occupations. The sheer number of items in the imperial and private family collections made meticulous tracking a constant challenge, especially during wartime. The lack of any definitive record of the Four Seasons brooch in subsequent imperial inventories adds to its enigmatic status. Unlike the more famous Habsburg jewels, such as the Grand Ducal Crown of Tuscany, diamonds, or specific large pearls, which are documented through centuries, this particular brooch seems to have faded from the historical record. There are no known surviving portraits of her, for instance, explicitly showing her wearing this specific brooch, which further complicates its tracing. Contemporary descriptions of its design are what primarily sustain its legend. The Four Seasons diamond brooch, if it truly existed in the form described, represents a lost masterpiece of 18th century jewelry art. Its disappearance highlights the fragility of even the most valuable possessions in the face of political change and the passage of time. Whether its diamonds were scattered into new pieces, or it was lost entirely during a moment of historical chaos, the brooch remains a testament to the opulence and artistic patronage of one of Europe's most powerful empresses. Its story serves as a reminder that not all treasures remain in their original form, and some simply vanish, leaving behind only the echo of their former brilliance. Number 4. The Imperial Talisman of Charles VI. Emperor Charles VI, who reigned from 1711 to 1740, was the last male Habsburg in the direct line. His life was largely dominated by his efforts to secure the succession for his daughter Maria Theresa through the pragmatic sanction. Beyond his political struggles, Charles VI was also a devout Catholic and a keen patron of the arts and sciences. Like his ancestors, he possessed an extensive collection of rare and curious objects known as a Kunstkammer, or cabinet of curiosities, which included scientific instruments, natural specimens, and religious relics. It was within this fascinating world of collected wonders that the story of the Imperial Talisman unfolds. This talisman was not a simple piece of jewelry, nor was it a traditional crown jewel. Instead, it was described as a unique, powerful papik, believed to possess protective qualities or even mystical powers. Tales of such talismans were common among European monarchs, who often sought objects that might grant divine favor, ensure victory in battle, or protect their lineage. The specific form of Charles VI's imperial talisman is debated. Some accounts describe it as a large, intricately carved amulet, perhaps made from a rare gemstone like a giant emerald or sapphire set in gold, and adorned with Kabbalistic symbols or ancient script. Other stories suggest it was a reliquary, a small container holding a sacred relic, perhaps a fragment of bone from a saint, or a piece of cloth from a holy person. Believed to offer protection to its bearer, adds to its mystique. What made this talisman particularly significant was its purported history. It was said to have been passed down through generations of Habsburg emperors, perhaps even tracing its origins back to the Holy Roman emperors of centuries past. This would have imbued it with immense symbolic power, making it not just a personal charm for Charles VI, but a tangible link to the dynasty's ancient lineage and its divine right to rule. It was not openly displayed with the crown jewels, but kept as a highly guarded personal possession, often brought out only for private rituals. or moments of great personal or political stress, its very secrecy contributed to its legendary status. The disappearance of the imperial talisman is a subject of much speculation, with several theories attempting to explain its fate. One prominent theory links its vanishing to the turbulent period immediately following Charles VI's death in 1740. His death plunged the Habsburg monarchy into a severe crisis, as other European powers challenged Maria Theresa's right to inherit the vast Habsburg dominions, leading to the brutal War of the Austrian Succession. In this period of intense uncertainty, with enemies on all sides threatening Vienna and the very survival of the dynasty, valuable items might have been moved, hidden, or even pilfered. It is believed that the talisman was not part of the official state treasury or the documented crown jewels, but rather a personal object kept in the emperor's private apartments, or a discreet vault within the Hofburg Palace. When Charles VI died, his personal effects would have been catalogued, but perhaps less rigorously than official state property. If the talisman was truly seen as a personal protective charm rather than a state asset, its fate might have been left to his closest confidants or personal staff. It is plausible that during the hurried and chaotic moments surrounding his death and the immediate scramble for power, the talisman was entrusted to someone who then either hid it too well, or perhaps succumbed to temptation and kept it for themselves. Another theory suggests that the talisman was deliberately destroyed or ritually buried. Some historical accounts suggest that certain highly symbolic or supposedly magical objects were sometimes taken out of circulation by succeeding rulers if they were deemed too powerful, too dangerous, or simply not aligned with the new ruler's beliefs. Maria Theresa, a pragmatic and deeply religious woman, might have viewed such a talisman as superstitious rather than truly holy. It is not impossible that she or one of her advisors arranged for its discreet disposal or burial, believing it to be a relic of an older, less enlightened age, or simply wishing to remove any potential for political exploitation. However, there is no direct evidence to support such an action. A third, more mundane possibility is that the talisman was simply lost during a transfer, or in the general upheaval of successive wars. While the major wars that followed Charles VI's death were not always fought on Austrian soil, the imperial court and its assets were frequently moved for security reasons. A small, though valuable object could easily be misplaced, stolen, or accidentally discarded during such movements, especially if its true significance was only known to a select few. The lack of precise, detailed inventories for every personal item of an emperor, particularly those seen as private rather than public, leaves ample room for such occurrences. The imperial talisman of Charles VI remains a ghost in the Habsburg archives, a rumored object of immense personal and symbolic value that simply vanished from history's stage. Its disappearance echoes the subtle distinctions between state property and personal possessions, and how easily even powerful artifacts can be lost when political and dynastic lines become blurred. Whether hidden, destroyed, or simply misplaced, the legend of the talisman speaks to the deep human desire for protection and the enduring mystery of objects imbued with historical power that seemingly disappear without a trace. Its story continues to intrigue those who delve into the hidden corners of imperial history. Number 3. Rudolph II's Grand Emerald. Emperor Rudolph II, who reigned as Holy Roman Emperor from 1576 to 1612, was arguably the most enigmatic and obsessive of the Habsburg rulers. He famously moved his court from Vienna to Prague, where he created one of the most astonishing Kunstkammern, or cabinets of curiosities. In Europe, Rudolph was not interested in practical governance. Instead, he dedicated himself to alchemy, astronomy, astrology, and the collection of art, scientific instruments, and natural wonders. His court became a magnet for scholars, artists, and charlatans from across the continent. Within this extraordinary collection were countless precious stones, including some of the largest and most magnificent emeralds known at the time. Emeralds, with their vibrant green color, were highly prized in the Renaissance, not just for their beauty, but for their perceived mystical properties. They were thought to bring good fortune, improve eyesight, and even reveal truth. Rudolf, with his fascination for the occult and the natural world, would have been particularly drawn to such stones. He amassed a staggering number of them, often acquiring them through his agents, who scoured the world from the newly discovered mines of Colombia to the ancient trading routes of India. Among these many gems, legend speaks of a grand emerald, a stone so large and so perfect that it stood out even in Rudolf's vast collection. This grand emerald was reportedly of an unusual size, perhaps several hundred carats, and possessed an extraordinary clarity and vivid green hue. It was not merely a cut jewel, but possibly an uncut or partially polished crystal. Revered for its natural form and inherent beauty, Rudolf himself was known to spend hours contemplating his treasures, believing them to hold secrets of the cosmos. The grand emerald might have been displayed in a special illuminated vitrine within his private chambers, or perhaps kept in a highly secured chest, only to be brought out for his personal study, or to impress visiting dignitaries. Its value would have been immense, equivalent to a king's ransom. The disappearance of Rudolf II's grand emerald is one of the more tantalizing mysteries of the Habsburg imperial collection. Unlike many other items in his Kunstkammer, which were meticulously catalogued and eventually dispersed among various European collections, or sold off after his death, this particular emerald seems to have vanished without a clear trace. Its vanishing is often linked to the tumultuous period that followed Rudolf's death in 1612, leading directly into the 30 Years' War, a devastating conflict that ravaged Central Europe for 3 decades. After Rudolf's death, his successor, his brother Emperor Matthias, found the imperial treasury depleted and the court in disarray. Rudolf's vast and somewhat chaotic collections became a target for both recovery and plunder. Many items were indeed sold to raise funds for the state, while others were divided among various Habsburg family members. However, during the 30 Years' War, particularly after the Battle of White Mountain in 1620, Prague was subjected to multiple occupations and pillaging. Swedish forces under General Bohan Banner notably sacked Prague Castle in 1648 during the war's final stages, carrying away vast quantities of Rudolf's remaining treasures, including many artworks, scientific instruments, and precious objects. One theory suggests that the Grand Emerald was among the items taken by the Swedes, while much of the Swedish booty was eventually catalogued and ended up in the Swedish royal collections or other European museums. The Grand Emerald is not definitively identified among the recovered items. It is possible that it was smuggled out by individual soldiers, melted down, or its sheer value and unique appearance led to its immediate sale into private hands, where it could have been recut to obscure its provenance. If it was an uncut crystal, it might have been faceted into multiple smaller, though still valuable, stones, making it virtually untraceable to its original form. Another theory points to internal pilfering during the chaotic years after Rudolf's death, but before the major wartime devastations. Rudolf's court was known for its intrigues and the presence of many individuals with varying degrees of loyalty. A gem of such immense value would have been a tempting target for theft by a trusted servant or a clever courtier who knew its exact location. If stolen, it would have been quickly spirited away, perhaps through underground networks, and sold discreetly, likely out of the country, to avoid detection. The absence of clear inventory records for such a personal and secretive item would have made its theft relatively easy to conceal. There is also the possibility that the Grand Emerald, due to its size and unique characteristics, was always more legend than a single perfectly identifiable object. Rudolf II certainly possessed numerous large emeralds, and it's possible that the Grand Emerald was a collective term for his most impressive stones, and survive today in various collections, but no longer recognized as the singular legendary piece. However, historical accounts often speak of it as a distinct, awe-inspiring stone. The legacy of Rudolf II's Grand Emerald lives on in the tales of lost Habsburg treasures. Its disappearance represents not just the loss of a valuable gem, but the vanishing of a piece central to the mystical and artistic world of one of Europe's most fascinating rulers. It continues to fuel the imaginations of treasure hunters and historians who dream of one day discovering this legendary stone, still pristine, perhaps hidden away in a forgotten vault or misidentified in an unassuming collection, waiting to reveal its long-held secrets. Number 2. The Jewels of Emperor Maximilian I's Lost Dowry. Emperor Maximilian I, often called the Last Knight, reigned as Holy Roman Emperor from 1493 to 1519. He was a pivotal figure in European history, known for his ambitious dynastic marriage policies, his love of chivalry, art, and printing, and his efforts to modernize the Habsburg state. Maximilian's strategic marriages, particularly for his children and grandchildren, laid the foundation for the vast Habsburg Empire of the 16th century, famously leading to the saying, "Let others wage war. You happy Austria." These alliances often involved intricate dowry agreements, exchanges of immense wealth, and the transfer of priceless jewels. Dowries in the late medieval and early modern periods were not merely gifts, they were fundamental elements of political and economic alliances. They represented a transfer of wealth from the bride's family to the groom's, often consisting of land, money, and movable goods, including textiles, furniture, and, crucially, jewels. These jewels were not only valuable assets, but also carried immense symbolic weight, signifying the prestige and wealth of both families involved. For a ruler like Maximilian, who was constantly in need of funds for his various wars and projects, securing a rich dowry for his son Philip the Handsome, and later for his grandchildren, was paramount. The story of the lost dowry jewels isn't about a single definitive dowry that vanished entirely. Instead, it refers to specific highly valuable sets of jewels promised or exchanged. During Maximilian's complex web of marriage negotiations, that for various reasons either never fully reached their intended destination or were separated from the main imperial collection and disappeared into the historical ether. One particular instance often cited relates to the marriage of his son, Philip the Handsome, to Joanna of Castile, daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain. This union was incredibly significant, eventually leading to the unification of the Habsburg and Spanish empires under their son Charles V. The dowry accompanying Joanna was expected to be immense, reflecting the immense wealth of Spain's burgeoning empire, fueled by the riches of the New World. While many Spanish jewels undoubtedly entered the Habsburg collection, through this marriage, some historical accounts suggest that certain specific, highly anticipated sets of jewels either never arrived in their entirety or were later diverted. The sea voyages between Spain and the Low Countries, where Philip and Joanna resided, were perilous, subject to storms, piracy, and even rival navies. A shipment of valuable jewels could easily have been lost at sea or captured. Another theory points to the turbulent political climate within the Burgundian territories which Philip inherited. The Low Countries were economically vibrant, but politically complex, with powerful cities and noble factions. Jewels, even those destined for imperial hands, might have been diverted or held by local authorities for various reasons, or even stolen amidst the shifting loyalties and occasional uprisings of the era. The vast distances and fragmented authority across the Habsburg dominions meant that control over every asset was a constant challenge. There were documented cases of Spanish treasure ships being raided by pirates or captured by rival navies in the Atlantic. While most of these incidents related to bullion, it is plausible that smaller, highly valuable shipments of personal jewels could have met a similar fate. Furthermore, the personal lives of Philip and Joanna were complicated. Philip's early death in 1506, followed by Joanna's descent into mental instability, created a period of significant political and personal chaos. During this time, the administration of their vast personal wealth, including incoming dowries or gifts, might have become disorganized. Jewels could have been misappropriated by various advisors or guardians, or simply lost track of amidst the rapid changes in regency and governance. The lack of detailed surviving inventories for every piece of royal jewelry from this specific period makes definitive tracing incredibly difficult. Unlike the formal crown jewels, personal marriage settlements often had less stringent public documentation. The lost dowry jewels are not a single identifiable gest, but rather a concept encompassing the high value and the historical circumstances that made certain precious items expected to join the Habsburg treasury disappear. It speaks to the challenges of transporting immense wealth across a vast and often hostile continent in the early modern period. For example, some historians have pointed to discrepancies between the expected value of certain Spanish gifts and what actually arrived or was accounted for in later Habsburg inventories. These discrepancies, though small in the grand scheme of imperial wealth, fueled the legends of missing gems. Maximilian himself was a shrewd negotiator and a meticulous record-keeper in many respects, but the sheer volume of his dynastic dealings combined with the inherent risks of travel and the political instability of the age meant that losses were inevitable. The concept of the lost dowry jewels serves as a fascinating footnote to the Habsburgs' rise to power, a reminder that even the most carefully orchestrated plans could be undone by the whims of fate, the treachery of men, or the vastness of the oceans. These unseen, uncounted diamonds and rubies, if they still exist, are likely dispersed, their imperial origins forgotten, swallowed by the tides of history, for never quite found its way to the grand vaults of Vienna. Number 1. The Lost Library of Matthias Corvinus and its Habsburg fate. The Bibliotheca Corviniana was one of the most magnificent libraries of the Renaissance, built by King Matthias Corvinus of Hungary, reigned 1458 to 1490. Matthias was a remarkable figure, a warrior king, a patron of the arts, and an intellectual who deeply admired Italian Renaissance humanism. His library, located in Buda, was intended to rival the Vatican Library in Rome and the Medici Library in Florence. It contained an astonishing collection of manuscripts, many adorned with exquisite illuminations and bound in sumptuous materials, including purple parchment, gilded leather, and silver clasps. These Corvinian manuscripts covered a vast range of subjects, from classical literature and philosophy to theology, history, and science, representing the pinnacle of Renaissance scholarship and artistry. After Matthias Corvinus's death in 1490, the fate of his glorious library became intertwined with the Habsburg dynasty. The Habsburgs, through a series of treaties and dynastic claims, eventually inherited the Hungarian throne. In the early 16th century, the Ottoman Empire began its relentless expansion into Central Europe, posing an existential threat to Hungary. This culminated in the Battle of Mohacs in 1526, a catastrophic defeat for the Hungarian forces which led to the death of King Louis II of Hungary and Bohemia, the last Jagiellonian ruler, and the subsequent division of Hungary. The Habsburgs, under Ferdinand I, brother of Emperor Charles V, claimed the Hungarian throne based on earlier dynastic agreements. With the Ottoman conquest of Buda in 1541, the Corviniana faced its greatest threat. Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, recognizing the immense value of the library, ordered many of the most splendid manuscripts to be taken as war booty to Constantinople. Ikstame. Some were indeed transported, and are now preserved in Turkish libraries, a testament to their survival. However, a significant portion of the library was reportedly either left behind in the chaotic aftermath of the Ottoman invasion, or simply scattered and looted by soldiers and civilians during the sacking of Buda. It is this dispersed, uncounted portion that became lost when the Habsburgs fully consolidated their control over parts of Hungary and established their rule. They also became the inheritors of what remained of Matthias Corvinus's legacy, including the remnants of his library. Over the subsequent centuries, particularly as the Habsburgs gradually pushed back the Ottomans and reclaimed lost Hungarian territories, there were efforts to recover and identify Corvinian manuscripts. Many hundreds of the original estimated 2,000 to 2,500 volumes were scattered across Europe. Some resurfaced in surprising places acquired by collectors or found in other royal libraries. The Habsburg emperors, themselves keen collectors, would have undoubtedly valued any Corvinian manuscripts they could acquire or reclaim. Many of these would have been absorbed into the Imperial Library in Vienna, the predecessor to the Austrian National Library. However, despite these efforts, a substantial number of Corvinian manuscripts remain unaccounted for. The lost portion of the library is not a single grand cache, but rather potentially hundreds of individual volumes that vanished after 1541. These could have been taken by Ottoman soldiers and never made it to Constantinople, or they might have been stolen by opportunistic individuals in the chaos of the city's fall. Some scholars believe that certain volumes were hidden away by Hungarian nobles or clerics, hoping to preserve them, only for their hiding places to be forgotten over time. The books might have been buried, concealed in church crypts, or tucked away in private estates, their existence fading from memory with each passing generation. The fate of these missing volumes also intertwines with subsequent conflicts. The long struggle between the Habsburgs and the Ottomans for control of Hungary stretched for over a century and a half, involving countless skirmishes, sieges, and periods of general instability. During these times, any hidden treasures, including valuable books, would have been at continuous risk of destruction, rediscovery, and re-loss or accidental damage. Furthermore, as the Habsburgs established their own grand libraries and collections, it is possible that some recovered Corvinian manuscripts were simply integrated into larger collections without materially mark their provenance. While some are clearly identifiable due to their unique bindings and illuminations, others might have been rebound or misidentified. Today, only about 216 Corvinian manuscripts are known to exist worldwide, scattered across libraries and museums in Europe and beyond, from Vienna to Istanbul, from Florence to Budapest. This small number highlights the vast scale of what was lost. The lost library of Matthias Corvinus is thus a testament to the fragility of cultural heritage in times of war and political upheaval. Its story, deeply connected to the Habsburg rise in Hungary, is a continuous search for pieces of a shattered intellectual and artistic legacy. Each rediscovered Corvinian volume is a major historical event, offering a glimpse into a magnificent past. The mystery of the hundreds of volumes that are still missing continues to inspire hope among scholars and treasure hunters who dream of unearthing a forgotten cache that would bring a significant part of this legendary library back to light. The enduring legacy of this lost library borrows the immense value of knowledge and beauty and the profound sadness when such treasures vanish from human reach.